Hi, my name's Alexis, and today I'll be talking about aphasia, which in its most basic sense is a behavior and language disorder in which one has problems communicating with others due to brain damage. I'm interested in aphasia because the brain is one of the most complex machines in the world, and I think it's amazing how it controls everything we do. Language and communication is such an innate ability that a lot of times we take for granted. I couldn't even comprehend how difficult it would be to not be able to communicate my thoughts with others, which is such a fundamental part of our lives. One time I was watching a TV show and the patient in the hospital was unable to tell the police about her attacker due to brain damage, which I now know is aphasia. This would fall under the topic biology of affect, cognition, and behavior because it's all about damage to different brain regions and how that damage affects our ability to understand and produce language. My presentation also falls under the topic of emotions, which will be seen later on. Before I start, I'm going to introduce the three main sources I have compiled for this presentation. I'll be talking about the National Institute on Deafness and Other Communication Disorders, a literary review, and a research study. All three of these either had the responsible organization or the author labeled to show that they were well established in their fields. All of them were created in order to inform people about aphasia in general or about a certain aspect of aphasia. The literary review and research study were both peer-reviewed and the sources were listed as well. So overall, these sources are credible. So what is aphasia really? Like I said before, aphasia is considered a behavior and language disorder in which one cannot properly communicate with others due to brain damage. But what does that really mean, and what brain regions are damaged? The two broad categories are fluent and non-fluent aphasia, and there are even more categories under these larger umbrellas. Fluent aphasia refers to a person who can create sentences that have correct flow or rhythm, but there's no meaning to the words they say. The most common form of fluent aphasia is called Wernicke's aphasia, which is caused by damage to the area of the temporal lobe known as Wernicke's area. People with Wernicke's aphasia typically cannot understand language very well. Non-fluent aphasia refers to someone who can choose the correct words for the meaning they are trying to get across, but they cannot connect full sentences and their speech is slow. The most common form of non-fluent aphasia is called Broca's aphasia, which is caused by damage to the area of the frontal lobe known as Broca's area. People with Broca's aphasia can generally understand language. Now, let's talk about how emotions are connected to aphasia. Molly Manning, Anne McFarland, Anne Hickey, Sue Franklin conducted a literary review in which they looked at how patients with aphasia caused by strokes viewed their futures, the world, and their qualities of life. A major part of the studies they were including was the patient's emotions towards living high-quality lives even with their condition. They want to be productive and be able to contribute to society. The purpose was to find out how to best support these patients in regaining their quality of life and how to help them become productive members of society. Through their methods and results, they reviewed a lot of published studies on this topic and found major themes and trends regarding how the patients felt and how they could best be helped. Basically, they found that the patients need people in their lives who will influence them to live positively and help them get involved in their communities. This data is really important because it will help us as medical professionals, as friends, as family, and as a society support people with aphasia in living long and happy lives. Now, you may be thinking that aphasia seems pretty straightforward in the sense that it's a type of language disorder, but there are actually new controversies regarding this simple label. Shaylee Sandberg performed a research study at Penn State regarding the brain regions that are affected by aphasia. The idea of localization, or that specific brain regions are responsible for specific aspects of behavior and cognition, has been losing traction as psychology as a field finds more and more evidence that most functions are controlled by multiple brain regions, not just one. This study builds on this movement away from localization by using fMRI imaging to show that the brain regions involved in functions other than language, including hearing, movement, attention, and decision-making, are also affected by aphasia. It shows that all of these regions are more loosely connected in patients with aphasia than in healthy adults. Thus, there are new ideas that aphasia shouldn't be considered only a language disorder. So overall, the most important things to remember are that there are many different types of aphasia, but Wernicke's and Broca's aphasia are a couple of the most common and are caused by damage to the areas of the same name. When patients with Wernicke's aphasia speak, their speech typically flows pretty well, but it has no meaning. And when people with Broca's aphasia speak, it's very disrupted and difficult to get out, but key words and ideas are gotten across. Although it's not yet clear the extent to which this disorder affects functions other than language, what is clear is that patients who suffer from this generally want to live as normal and productive lives as possible, and we can help them with that.